We came to town. We had 18 months from announcement to execution of year one, which in retrospect was very ambitious.
That'd be insane, wouldn't it?
Well, yes. Our team pulled off a miracle, and we could not have done it without the support of our local partners and the stakeholders. F1 Academy is obviously a program that started not that long ago with a lot of support from Liberty Media to help bring women into motorsport. And our goal would obviously be to see a woman in that driver's seat on race night. But it's also designed to just bring women into the sport more generally. And I could not be prouder of the fact that when you walk down the paddock, you just see so many more women working for the teams, working as engineers, working on the business side, mechanics, technicians, programmers. It is about driving, but it is also about so much more than that.
It's a real honor to do the race, but also it's a pressure because you want to make sure that you treat it the way it should be treated. It's the biggest motorsports event in the world, biggest sporting event in the world, arguably. There's the pressure of history, the pressure of the personalities, the aura of the place. You just want to make sure that it's all done the way it should be and that the fans, reconnect and enjoy it. And, it's one of those things that's just, it's really hard to put into words. You have either an IndyCar race at a certain time, a NASCAR race at a certain time, a Formula One race at a certain time. And all weekend your playing field's the same group of people. So it's like every week, how do you make the cars, the people, the racing interesting? Because even though you have 38 weeks here and 20 weeks here and 25 weeks in different series, you're only playing with the same deck of cards, so to speak. So whereas the NFL, you've got different matchups, you've got different players, you've got different head-to-heads. Here, you've got what happened the week before and how you spin that forward.
Let's go back to the beginning, if we could. And I want to actually read back a quote that you shared that goes back to the original purchase of Formula One in 2017 and the vision for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. When you went to the Clark County Commissioner's office in Las Vegas, you had an idea. The idea was a night race, not only a night race, but you're going to run it right down the strip. And you said when you explained everything to Clark County, they sort of looked at us, you said, like, what is this woman smoking? Is that accurate?
It's accurate that I said it, and it's also accurate that we had some very quizzical stares when we first came to town with our sizzle reel and our dream.
Yeah, what was their initial thinking? I mean, was it like, what in the world would you like to do here? And can you please explain it to me for a third time?
So absolutely, we basically asked Clark County to shut down 3.8 miles of a 24-hour living, breathing city that never sleeps, and to encapsulate more than 60,000 hotel rooms during the time when our track would be hot. And then we said we were going to drive cars down the strip at more than 200 miles an hour.
Yeah. And they said, how are we going to do it?
They did. They were very enthusiastic about the idea of putting Las Vegas on a global scale, like no one's ever done before. But there was a number of logistical questions, as you can imagine, that they presented to us.
Where did the logistics start and end?
Well, they still have not ended. We continue to look for new and more efficient ways to keep traffic moving, and to continue to have transportation be able to come into and out of our circuit during hot track. But from the very beginning, we spent a lot of time working with Public Works on what traffic patterns could look like around the installation of temporary bridges that would allow ingress and egress while we were in hot track. And of course, a lot of focus around safety and security.
Yeah. Did you become a bit of a city planner to some extent?
I did. I've always really enjoyed the idea of civil engineering. So it was a little bit of a glimpse into what a career could have looked like.
When you start off with a plan like this, and maybe let's back up right to the original vision, because I know that the goal, as I said, when Liberty purchased Formula One, was to increase the global reach. When did Vegas come along in that conversation?
So Vegas had always been an idea or an ambition for Formula One, even before we Liberty acquired the asset. It is such a perfect match of speed and glamour, and truly a place that we thought we could put on an iconic event. Um, Conversations had gone from time to time between the London team and some of the local stakeholders, but it wasn't really until after COVID started where those conversations kicked off in earnest.
And when you approach the idea of a Vegas, I mean, there is obvious glitz and glamour, but what was the biggest appeal? Was it running cars down an iconic straightaway and showcasing the city, or was it that you could create an environment where you had the most passing possible because you had a bit of a white sheet of paper?
So Las Vegas is a landmark destination. It is the one of the highest end hospitality and entertainment venues that you can find in the world, which was such a great brand match for us. We thought we could create just an unprecedented event here. At the same time as LVCVA had been really reworking Las Vegas to become the sports and entertainment capital of the world, we arrived at the right time and with the right thought, which is to bring this global brand, this iconic sport, to a brand new destination here in the United States, and be able to access a whole new demographic of fan.
Yeah. Did it seem like a bit of an impossible dream at certain stages?
Yes, there were many times where we had some setbacks and just continued to push forward with our own fortitude, as well as some great partnerships with the local stakeholders. Our founding partners believed in our mission from day one, but worked really hand in glove with us to help the regulators get comfortable that this is an event that could take place.
What pushed them to the point where they felt comfortable? Where did it get comfortable for them?
I probably about a day before the year one event was once we were able to finish our initial regulatory review and permitting, but I think everyone bought into the vision of what this event could mean to the Valley and how it could put Las Vegas on that global stage in a way that had really never been done before.
We talk about year one for a minute, and then I want to transition to what you did for year two. I mean, year one, you had a couple of things going at the same time. Word on the street was that if you were a hotel owner or if you're a restaurant owner and you didn't put something on your windows to prevent people viewing, that there were going to be fines. Then there was the possibility of a strike among the workers that was averted at the last minute, and those were, I think, concessions or the grandstands, right? So you had a couple of things going on at the same time. This was not a smooth trip down the front straightaway, was it?
No, it was not smooth at all. We came to town. We had 18 months from announcement to execution of year one, which in retrospect was very ambitious.
That'd be insane, wouldn't
Well, yes. Our team pulled off a miracle, and
Yeah.
we could not have done it without the support of our local partners and the stakeholders, in really allowing us to pull together to get the pit building built in 11 months from ground break, to move in and to make this event go off in year one. And it was a fantastic race.
It
No
was.
one will forget when Charles passed Max on the straightaway and Max fought back for the win. Those were incredible moments for the 2023 race year.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be there, and it was an environment that was wonderfully crazy in all aspects. The next morning, of course, you had the cab drivers and the Uber drivers complaining about the fact that they couldn't get in certain places. So you get through year one, and I'm guessing, like the Super Bowl, you start planning for year two on the next day. And what was the primary thing that you wanted to fix? What were you most focused on from the beginning?
So I'd say there were two objectives that were forefront. One was to change our product ladder in order to create more opportunities to get more fans on track. And we accomplished that by adding another 10,000 plus general admission tickets. And when we sold out for Saturday night, just seeing the throngs of fans, many of whom are new fans of the sport, enjoying our race was just an incredibly rewarding moment, given the goal we started with the 12 months earlier. And then the other goal we had was to really enhance and improve our communications plan, particularly among the local media, and to improve our relationship with the residents of the Valley. We moved so quickly to make year one happen. We just did not have the opportunity to engage in the type of community benefits that we were able to do in year two.
And did you reassure folks who drove Ubers or taxis that they'd be able to get around a little easier in year two?
We did. We had a much better communications plan. We developed that in partnership with Clark County. We also brought on a new head of corporate affairs who was instrumental in putting together a series of fantastic community events to really give back to the community that we inconvenienced so much to make year one happen. And what we've been able to do through year two is to prove we can put this event on without creating a ton of traffic and irritation. We did not have to re-asphalt 3.8 miles of streets. We put our lighting trusses up and we put our safety barriers in place, but we did it in a much more organized manner that caused far less disruption.
Yeah. You mentioned the 10,000 general admission tickets, 3 new fan zones also. And a more, I think there were more single day event tickets that you created too, right? So whole new packages that you really wanted to, was that just to try to make it more accessible to everyone?
Yes, absolutely. When we put together our initial product ladder, it was focused on the more traditional 3-day ticket package and really marketed towards the more traditional race fans. And what we discovered through year one is that this is the race new fans are coming to. And that new demographic that we have worked so hard to reach out to, a more female fan base, a younger fan base, more diverse fan base, they are the ones coming to this event. And we wanted to create a number of options throughout our product ladder to invite them to learn and enjoy our sport.
You had a bunch of other things going on as well. Let's talk a little bit about room rates too, because I know that was such a source of consternation in year one. They were exorbitant at the beginning when the race was announced, and then from what I understood, they were rock bottom in the days leading up to it. How did you address some of those issues for those who were attending who were from out of town?
Well, I think in year one, you're always going to have the buzz and the excitement of the inaugural event and people wanting to come and experience that first year of a new race. Then as you move into year two, we saw a lot of fluctuations throughout the year in terms of dynamic pricing, both on our tickets as well as the room rates. We saw some softness just in the Vegas market generally. But then as we got past election day, we saw a hockey stick on our demand curve. When we look back, it makes sense that Las Vegas is known for being a last minute market. That was, of course, not the case for a year one event, but that is an anomaly. What we are looking at for year two and beyond is that much more traditional Las Vegas market. So
you want to draw more locally?
We are very excited about being able to draw locally and then also from the geographies that Las Vegas would typically feed from. But we're also really hoping to see a lot more international tourists on a go-forward basis coming to years 3 and beyond, such that now that the room rates, I think, have stabilized and that the casinos and the other properties have more experience, they have more data points, and I think they'll be going out in year 3 with a more moderated rate approach, which should be more welcoming to people coming from outside of the United States.
And what was when you analyzed all of it at the end, what were the percentages? Where did people come from?
Primarily from the United States.
They're the U.S. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Very much so.
Interesting. So this is the phenomena that we've talked about on this show for 3 years. This is the phenomena of Formula One in America, that Um, those who have been following Formula One for a long time in America know that most visitors were international visitors, and now it's homegrown. That's obviously a byproduct of Netflix's popularity and attention. But you hit on something earlier. The demographic is changing. I've seen that in places like Austin and Miami and Vegas. How much is that? How much did the demographic change from year one to year two, from a gender and or age perspective?
So based on the data that we have so far, and we're obviously still collecting, but we saw very much consistency between year one and year two, and that is more women fans, younger fans, many people who this is their first Formula One race, and they're coming out to Las Vegas to learn about the excitement that is Formula One in the U.S.
It makes you want to send a check to Netflix every time you host the race, doesn't it?
Well, I'd say that the other really important phenomenon in our being able to break into this new fan base in the US was opening the sport up to social media. Prior to Liberty's acquisition, teams, drivers, they weren't permitted to be promoted on the social media platforms. And we opened it up. We opened the sport up. Now, when you think about the younger generation, they live on social media. So they're consuming that content in a way that's creating an entirely new fan base.
Yeah, amazing. Speaking of fan base and women, you have been very active in establishing and supporting the F1 Academy, the all-female series that recently just completed its first season. And tell me a little bit about that. Tell our listeners a bit about that. I know that it's designed to offer a platform to female motorsport enthusiasts and drivers, but what else is it doing?
So F1 Academy is obviously a program that started not that long ago with a lot of support from Liberty Media to help bring women into motorsport. And our goal would obviously be to see a woman in that driver's seat on race night, but it's also designed to just bring women into the sport more generally. And I could not be prouder of the fact that when you walk down the paddock, you just see so many more women working for the teams, working as engineers, working on the business side, mechanics, technicians, programmers. It is about driving, but it is also about so much more than that.
Yeah. What's the vision? I know that Vegas wants to be included on a go forward basis, right? With the F1 Academy, where does that stand? What would you like to have happen?
Well, we're thrilled that we are able to include F1 Academy as our support race for year three. And we're looking forward, we will, yes. And we're looking forward to really highlighting these young women drivers who are so inspirational to younger girls throughout the Valley as well as throughout the United States. And they are truly role models. We were very fortunate to have some of the drivers speak at our fan experience over on the Win West lot this year. And just to see the children's reaction to seeing a teenage girl up on stage in her driver's uniform, ready to compete in a world that has been historically predominantly male, was something that was very rewarding to see and is exactly where we'd like to take F1 Academy.
Tell me a bit about Susie Wolf's involvement there too, for those who don't know.
So Susie has led this program from day one. She is a former driver herself, and she is truly an inspiration to us all. We could not be more fortunate to have her in that role. She is both an iconic businesswoman as well as, I said, a former very successful driver in her own right. So she brings to these girls a fantastic role model in so many ways. And she has also put her heart and soul into making F1 Academy successful.
There's a theme here too. Since 2012, there's really only been one female race promoter, and that was Miss Mullenblatt. Is that how you pronounce her last name? Who was overseeing the Hungarian Grand Prix? You're taking charge here. You're promoting not only Las Vegas, but you're promoting diversity and inspiring a new generation of women to pursue careers in motorsport generally. Do you see yourself that way? Is that one of the causes that you're looking to accomplish?
So I have spent a large portion of my career looking for ways to advance women in business, whether that was in the law field, whether that's in corporate America or now in motorsports. It is not that long ago before the glass ceiling had been broken, and I'm fortunate to have been able to benefit from the work of generations before me. And it's an important goal of mine personally to create those opportunities for future generations of women.
Yeah, wonderful. I imagine, given your role over the last few years, you've continued to see even a shift in leadership roles for women across Formula One. And I'm not talking about just the technicians or the F1 Academy, but more broadly. Would you say that that's the case?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned, when you walk up and down the paddock now, as compared to 7 years ago, you see so many more women participating in the sport in very different ways. And obviously our head of commercial here in Las Vegas is Emily Prazer, and
Right.
she took over the role of chief commercial officer of F1 as a whole. She is an incredibly talented lady, and I'm fortunate to have been her partner in building this tremendous event. But it would have been selfish of me to not share those talents with the broader sport.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk a little bit about you. You have an enormous legal background. In fact, you started off as a legal assistant back in East Meadow, New York, in June of 1993, right? After graduating from St. John's University School of Law. Is that right?
So I actually started while I was in college. I
Okay.
worked my way through college and law school.
Okay. All right. And but your pathway was a legal one.
Yes. So my background, obviously, I've been a trained lawyer for many years, but I've always worked on the deal side. I was a finance major undergrad, and one of the reasons I went into corporate law was because it was a marriage of business and law, and enabled me to use my skill set to create deals, to create shareholder value, and to build. I never had any interest in being a litigator. I really enjoyed the commercial side of the law. And then after joining Liberty in-house and taking on a more commercial operational perspective, was asked to get this project up and running, and just truly had an incredible passion for this opportunity.
Yeah, we talked to Greg on the program here, who offered high praise for you. Tell me a little bit about the moment when that decision was made, and maybe it was the moment where Greg approached you and wondered whether you'd want to start a race in 18 months.
So, as I mentioned, I started coming to Las Vegas during the COVID immigration restrictions when my London colleagues weren't able to come into the country, and I was fortunate to form the relationships with our founding partners, such that when we came up to the announcement event, Greg and Stefano asked me if I would be willing to continue, overseeing this project, even though it was only 18 months to go until we were going to start the event. And again, I had developed such an incredible passion for the project. I had Emily Prazer, as my partner in this venture. She is truly a unicorn of talent, and we just got at it and made it happen. And when we sat on the grid right after the podium ended, year one, it was truly surreal to realize that we had really built this from scratch, from a vacant piece of property that now sits Grand Prix Plaza, which will launch its year-round activation in 3 months. We really couldn't have been prouder to be asked to run this event.
Did you grow up in an automotive family?
My father was an auto mechanic, and
He was a mechanic.
He was a
Okay.
mechanic, and I remember growing up, my parents had a hot rod, a 1971 Ford Torino, and I would spend a lot of time sitting in the back as they drove around Queens and Long Island. And I've always had a love of cars. I still have a love of cars. I probably buy too many of them.
Well, that's not a bad problem. And auto racing, was it ever in your purview?
I've never done it, but I've always wanted to. They will not let me drive the track with the safety car, even though I've asked many times. But it's something I've always loved. I've always enjoyed speed and fast cars myself. Fortunately, been able to avoid speeding tickets for the most part. But again, the automotive field is a passion of mine.
How much did you have to get up to speed about all things Formula One, and how big was that learning curve?
So I had understood the commercial side of the business, having obviously worked on the acquisition of Formula One from the beginning, as well as working with the company as the parent shareholder. But really, the learning curve for me was around the race operations side and the event operations side. Learning about the FIA regulations and how you build a track and what do safety barriers need to look like, as well as on the event space of just how do you build a grandstand and how do you piece together a fan zone. So there was a tremendous learning curve, but it was fascinating and I loved every minute of it.
We'll start with the Indy 500 because it's sort of the freshest news, if you will, but we have so many topics to get into. What will it be like for you when they drop the green at Indy on Fox Sports and you sitting there as the producer?
It's such a bucket list thing for me. It's like it's a pinch me moment. I hate saying that. I know it's pretty trite, but it's where, back in the day, I started as a pup in this business as, a production assistant or feature producer. And just walking in that place is so special. It's a real honor to do the race, but also it's a pressure because you want to make sure that you treat it the way it should be treated. It's the biggest motorsports event in the world, biggest sporting event in the world, arguably. There's the pressure of history, the pressure of the personalities, the aura of the place. You just want to make sure that it's all done the way it should be and that the fans, reconnect and enjoy it. And it's one of those things that's just it's really hard to put into words. But you just want to make sure that you do the event in a way that's, respectful and also exciting and entertaining and all those things, but also remember where you are because it's a pretty special place.
Yeah, not get too overwhelmed by all of it.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. How do you prepare to do a race like that? Do you go back and think about the ways that you approached other events that you've covered? Do you look at the history of how it's been documented? Do you do all of that? Or do you just, is a lot of it gut feel based on what you've done before?
All of it.
Yeah.
And some of it's your gut because you have to go with your gut on some things. Some of it's the cadence of the race the last few years. I mean, it's a race that's changed a lot, in the over 100 years it's been run. It's everything. I think the main thing is trying not to overthink it, trying to understand that you're in the moment and making sure that you're telling the stories in the moment that deserve being told. And respecting, like I said a minute ago, respecting what it is, but also not getting intimidated by what the event is. And I think really being in the moment is the most important thing because every race is different. Every race has a different story to tell. And even every 500 has a different story to tell. So it's really about staying focused, not overthinking, and also appreciating the moment because it's special, it's a special place and it's a special event and you want to convey that. But I think it's really about being in the moment and being aware and understanding all your assets, knowing where they live. The beauty of doing that race is you have all month to do practices and qualifying shows, and there's all this drama building up to the race, and you get to really kind of test out things instinctively, get in a rhythm with the crew, get everybody up to speed, figure out what the story and cadence of the racing is for the month, because every place you go is a different place, no matter what type of racing it is. So really just making sure you're very much aware, very much ready to go with what happens and not try to be so structured that you can't react when things happen.
Give us a bit of a window into how producing racing is different from the other things that you've done, whether it's the NHL or other sports that you've been involved in. How hard is it to be a racing producer?
I think it's really hard. I mean, I love it, but it's never stops. It's in real time. You cannot plan. You can think that you know every storyline going in. And most sports are like that too. I mean, you can prepare for an NFL game and think it's going to go one way and it goes total opposite way. But racing, there's so many variables, whether it's NASCAR or IndyCar, depending on how many cars you have, 22 drivers in IndyCar that are constantly on the track. You have 22 teams, 22 strategists, 22 cars. Like you start multiplying the characters involved, just the characters, it's over 100. Then you're getting into the actual technology, the technology you see on the air, the technology of the car, explaining the car. Then you get into the strategy. There's so many things happening at one time, and it's in massive amounts of space, miles of racetrack. Some places that you can't keep track of everything at the same time, although you're trying to. And how, stories are coming and going, as they say. Drivers are coming to the front, drivers are going to the back. It's just not obvious. There's nothing obvious about doing a motorsport event. It's always something different. Everything's always on the edge, whether it's the speed, the driver, the team, sometimes even the show, because you're trying to follow all the storylines. And you never, except now with stage breaks in NASCAR, you really don't have timeouts. There's no regrouping except for your 2-minute commercials. I really find it's probably the ultimate challenge. It's a giant puzzle. You're making split-second decisions constantly, sometimes, more than 10 in a minute. You're making these split-second calls and following stories based on everything, how it's all unfolding. I love it. There's nothing like it, honestly.
And you're competing now not only against maybe what you see in front of you, but now all kinds of other elements, including online activity. Now, as you know, in examples of sports and football, there are now multiple channels showing the same game, but with different feeds. In the case of Monday Night Football and what the Manning cast has done. So it's no longer, Pam, the setup with a few cameras, right? It's from my vantage point, it's wildly complex. Do I have that right?
Yeah, because everybody wants a different peek, behind the curtain, wants to know more about the car, more about the driver, more about the technology, more about what's going into the strategy. I mean, but the interesting thing about racing is where you have, 10 NFL games on a Sunday happening at one time or within a few hours of each other. You have one race. You have either an IndyCar race at a certain time, a NASCAR race at a certain time, a Formula One race at a certain time. And all weekend you're playing fields the same group of people. So it's like every week, how do you make the cars, the people, the racing interesting? Because even though you have 38 weeks here and 20 weeks here and 25 weeks in different series, you're only playing with the same deck of cards, so to speak. So whereas the NFL, you've got different matchups, you've got different players, you've got different head-to-heads. Here, you've got what happened the week before and how you spin that forward. So that's different too. But, to your point, I mean, there are different feeds. There are people in chats. There are social media things. There's, online racing and iRacing and esports and all that. But in reality, the beauty of motorsports is there's really, when the event's happening in that series, it's the one event. Even though there might be multiple options for different types of racing, it's that one group that you're following.
You're no stranger to the paddock and the paddocks of the world. And I want to talk a little bit about your history, including your start back as a producer with ESPN in 1987 after leaving Sports Channel New York, right? Where you effectively got your start. Where did the passion come from to do all this?
As far as overall entertainment or sports, I've always loved sports. Growing up in the Northeast, I grew up in Yankees Red Sox country. It was always a talk in my family. We all love sports. We still do to this day. And for some reason, for me, I just was always creative. I liked writing. I didn't quite know where my passions were going to lead, but I liked visualizing things. I liked directing people, kids in my neighborhood. I did a lot of things like that growing up. that kind of led to, oh, wow, I could do this as a living. Like I could go to college and I could actually learn what it's really like to do this. And luckily I had a family, and my parents really supported me to give me the chance because they didn't know anything about any of this. And I went to college at Ithaca College in upstate New York and touched every piece of equipment I could from the moment I got there and just loved every minute of it more and more. And that's really how it started.
What did you like about the behind the camera stuff? Was it the technical side of it? Was it the documenting what would happen? What was the storytelling? Maybe all that.
I liked the storytelling. I liked telling people stories, asking questions. I'm very curious. I'm curious in life. I liked organizing. I liked setting shots up. I liked following. I love puzzles. I still love puzzles. So I love doing puzzles in real time. And that's kind of what this was. And it kind of brought all those things together. I mean, I like I said, I loved writing from the time I was a kid, and I liked telling people stories, reading books about people, connecting with people, connecting those stories. And in college, I really got to start to do that. Cornell University was really gracious as well. They offered opportunities for Ithaca kids to come do their events or cover their events. I met a lot of great people there. So getting a chance to do that as a college kid. And we had in Ithaca, we even had our own TV truck, which was pretty ahead of its time
Wow.
for that
Wow.
era. We were producing games in upstate New York and syndicating them around the state, because Ithaca had a very good college, a Division III football team. And Cornell, not all those games were televised. So sometimes they let us do their games and syndicate them. The schools had their own arrangement. And we branched out while I was there to all kinds of sports, baseball, hockey, basketball, you name it. And we would go to Cornell or Ithaca and just do those games. And, that just kind of nurtured this whole adventure that I've been on now since I left school.
And racing. I mean, that's effectively the path that you took, and it didn't take long. You're sitting there as the producer of the San Marino race or the Brazilian Grand Prix, 1990, just a few years after you got started, pushing the buttons and making sure people were doing what they were supposed to do and telling the story of Formula One before Formula One in America was cool.
Well, I owe all that to a gentleman named Terry Lingner, um, because racing was the furthest thing from my mind when I first started in this business. I was essentially, like you said earlier, in New York City covering the NFL and the NHL right out of college, for Sports Channel New York for a nightly show that they had. And when I went to ESPN, I really was essentially there to do work on hockey, the NHL, or the NFL. I was doing, feature producer, that sort of thing. And I went on a vacation and came back, and ESPN had lost the NHL contract. It had gone, ironically, to Sports Channel New York.
Ah.
And so I had never, it was my first experience going through anything like that. I had no idea what that meant for me. And Terry Lingner was my boss, and he called me in, and he was very blunt. And you have to remember the times. And he said, I just don't know right now that there's a path. I know you want to produce live events. I just don't know there's a path right now. I just don't know how you would do that in stick and ball, because you have to remember back then, ESPN was very small, like maybe 10 producers, like it was very small. And he said to me, but I think if you would be open-minded and go to this auto race in Watkins Glen, New York. And I was like, well, I know where that is. I used to drive through there going to school all the time. I'd like to introduce you to a gentleman named Benny Parsons, go to the NASCAR race, see if you like it. I think you could apply what you've been doing in the NHL in motorsports. And who knows, maybe someday you'll get a chance to produce something. But try. If you're willing to try it, I'm willing to have you go and check it out. And I went and met a man named Benny Parsons, who became a huge mentor, as well as Terry Lingner. And now here I am. So it was basically a barrier. I never thought naively, I didn't know about sports contracts at that point. I was just a barely out of college. And, it just led to a really great opportunity. And I took the chance.
How did Benny help you?
Oh gosh, Benny taught me so much about motorsport. I mean, look, I was a girl from the Northeast that, my dad was into cars, but he didn't show me, where the oil went in the car, or he might have, but I didn't pay attention. I was too busy, doing something else. And Benny taught me a lot, not only about the car, but about the people in the sport and who the characters were and how their stories needed to be told and should be told. He educated me in every way as far as how the paddock or the garage in NASCAR operated. Introduced me to some people who became dear friends, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, like people that through the years we've all grown up together. But he really taught me. He was open to some of my crazy ideas, like when we would do a hat of the week or buffet Benny or things like that. He was open to some of my crazy ideas to have him try. He taught me the nuances of strategy, technology, just all the ins and outs, and then helped nurture my creativity to see where it could be applied in the sport.
What did you learn about yourself in that journey? Because, obviously, with no motorsports experience, no desire to necessarily point that direction, was it the adaptability that you came to appreciate about yourself, or did you just fall in love with this new non-stick and ball effort that you were a part of?
It's adaptability. I also, for some reason, I was always open-minded to taking a
Hmm.
little bit of a risk. Um, I was always taught there wasn't always one path to get where you want to go. And I liked learning new things, but I really, really liked the people once I got to start meeting different race car drivers, different team members, different team owners, looking at their history, looking at where they came from. And think about it. I mean, in NASCAR was really on the first, that was really as it was starting to move up.
Right.
In the, 1979 it happened. It was getting more network exposure. It was just a really good time of growth and an interesting time to be there. And I just really like telling the stories of these characters. Coming from the Northeast, it was a lot different to learn about different backgrounds and where everybody came from and how they all, got their start. And I like telling those stories.
Yeah, your curiosity was you had a craving for it, and it was being filled. Not only was NASCAR on an ascension, so was ESPN,
Mhm.
right? And you mentioned it. There being a less than a dozen producers at the time in 1987. You look at it throughout your career. Was it 13 years that you were there, right? During your longest stretch,
Hmm.
you
Yeah, back and forth. I've been on, fortunate to work on and off with them. Yes.
and even to the explosion into things like the X Games, where
Mhm.
you were a producer and doing moto events and freestyle moto, rallycross, global rallycross. All of a sudden, you're doing all kinds of stuff that is involved with not necessarily just a racetrack, but an exploding part of the industry. That must have been fascinating too, Pam.
It was a different challenge because a lot of those were startups. A lot of them evolved from things that we said, how could we make better? How can we make better? Open-mindedness of discussing among different stakeholders in those events, whether it was ESPN, X Games, Supermoto, the Moto X guys. How can we make it better? How can we make it more interesting for the fans? And that again, that was another event that was in a really cool time, right? Like it was the Travis Pastrana, Ken Block era where people really loved those heroes, and all those events evolved over time, and it was great to be part of it because we could look at it. We had a blank sheet of paper and say, hey, okay, let's invent this, or let's make this better, or hey, they do this over in this country, let's try it here. And it was a really great time to learn how to do something a little bit different, be a little bit more entertaining to a different audience, and be able to evolve every year and get to to bring it to a different place. where now some of those events influence events that you see now in racing and other places.
In fact, less than a decade later, you're with Speed, and now you're doing documentaries. You're doing NASCAR Champions or Men Behind the Wrenches, NASCAR Classics. How did that transition occur? Why to go from live into documentary?
Well, I was still doing live at the same time. I had gone to Fox in 2001, and that's when Fox and Speed kind of merged or became
Right.
one. And David Hill, who was our chairman, asked me to help with that transition. So that's how I started doing those type of programs. I had done some long form programs at ESPN when Dale Earnhardt won his 7th championship. We did a special. When Richard Petty retired, we did a special, and I had done those. I had done a lot of different long form there within the Sports Center, ESPN Speed World genre. So now going to Fox, David had asked me to participate in the transition to Speed. And so that's how those shows came about. And then through the years, while it was still Speed, sometimes they'd ask me to do a long form special, like the 5th anniversary of Dale Earnhardt's death or things like that. And so over time, they would ask me to do some of those projects. So it kind of went hand in hand with what we were doing with the live racing on the network.